has tried to funnel the person in charge of their investigations into an industry association that's got an association with an RTO that's had 120 Victorian licensed private investigator qualifications and licenses taken off them and cancelled. The VWA has made a very big mistake. There was no written agreement.
There is no written agreement.
There was no contract.
What contract?
They should have had a written
We'll call it a written agreement.
And that should have been registered with ASCA. But now
This partnership is over.
it's over. The VWA proudly present on the internet their prosecutions of people who have committed external fraud against the VWA scheme in Victoria. But by funneling their staff through two only organisations, they are ensuring that any type of internal fraud is ignored and put aside. That way it is free to run amok, because a properly trained fraud investigator is not going to look at just external fraud. That investigator is going to bury deep into what's going on with internal fraud as well. They do not want you to know there's a possibility of that happening when they limit who can do courses or what associations must be joined by the inspectors at WorkSafe. The AIPI is associated with a registered training organisation that's had over 120 issued private investigation qualifications in Victoria cancelled by the regulator, the Victorian Police Licensing Regulation Division, who did a very good job in cancelling those qualifications because they were not done in accordance with the LRD's conditions of approval for registered training organisations in Victoria. The regulator, the VWA, is out of touch with the reality of what's happening in Victoria in relation to those responsible for looking after the investigations involving the injured workers of Victoria in an ethical manner, where no money, such as a $145 bribe to grease the wheel, has to change hands. VWA in Victoria has tried to funnel the person in charge of their investigations into an industry association that's got an association with an RTO that's had 120 Victorian licensed private investigator qualifications and licenses taken off them and cancelled. The VWA has made a very big mistake. There was no written agreement.
There is no written agreement.
There was no contract.
What contract?
They should have had a written
We'll call it a written agreement.
And that should have been registered with ASCA. But now
This partnership is over.
it's over. He gets away with it. Nothing happens, and the minister isn't made aware of it, and the person in charge at WorkSafe isn't aware that it's happening. Then it'll become the norm that the licensed private investigators in Victoria have to join the AIPI and pay $250 a year membership fee when they can be a member of any other industry association of their choice for less than $100 or free. But the VWA has chosen to funnel the first lot through into the AIPI. They can't do it. They're public servants. They don't have the right to do that. They don't tell you what food to eat, what colour tie to wear, or what kind of model of vehicle to buy. That's not their job. It's a very hot day. I need to cool down.
Remember your training.
I will order some icy poles.
Delivery ice. Make your temperature nice. Your card has been charged $145 for this service. Your Golden Time ice cream is now being delivered to your surveillance vehicle.
No, I didn't order a Golden Time. I want Icy Pop.
Due to departmental workplace health and safety laws, that product is no longer available. Golden Time is now the only authorized ice cream.
Regardless of what happens, if you're a Victorian licensed private investigator and you feel that you have to join an industry association to remain in business as funneled by the BWA in that ad 2 weeks ago, wrong is wrong, even if everyone is doing it, people. Right is right, even if no one is doing it. So stay right. Don't go with the crowd. The Victorian WorkSafe Authority like investigators to keep a record of their investigations in a handwritten book. They don't specify what kind of book, but what's really important about the book where you keep your record of your investigations is that the pages within that book are numbered by a machine. So they must have numbers at the bottom of the page, or the top of the page, as in this case. The reason for that is you write it in ink, not pencil. You're an investigator. Same with police. They don't use pencils, they use ink. You write it in ink in the book, and it's a record of your instructions, who instructed you, the time you started and the time you finished that investigation. And it's a really good habit to get into, because if ever you end up in court and you're challenged about how you keep records of your investigations, you'll be able to pull up 5 or 6 copies of the books that you've been keeping over the years and say, I record all of those, and no, I did not make that up last night in my home office and write it in there in a blank space, because all your investigations over the last 5 years or 2 years or 20 years are all listed in books like this. Now, I have several of these books. In fact, here's the first one I ever had. It's a little bit ratty, it's a little bit old, it's full of old licences that I've had over the years, and up in the corner I've actually got the first check butt I was ever paid as a licensed private investigator to do a job by myself. And I was really proud of that, because it's the first time I did it without working for anyone else. So, I can go back to that book and I can, look at historical investigations I've done. Look, here's one that's really interesting. No, there's a warning there. One thing investigators that you work for as a subcontractor hate is people talking about the investigations that they're doing or that they've done. What's fabulously interesting to you as a beginner is really boring to the people that have been doing it for 15 years. So my advice is, yes, get the book. Do what they ask you to do. Even if you don't work for WorkSafe Victoria, it's a great habit to get into, and it will protect your backside if ever you're accused of not keeping appropriate records, if ever you're accused of making up something last night before you went to court and you were going to be cross-examined. This protects you in those cases. Yes, you'll have diaries as well, but this one covers the things, the time it took, who instructed you, who you were working for, and when you started and when you finished that actual case. Your running sheets will have all the daily parts of that. That's important, but this one is a confirmation that you're a good record keeper and the pages are numbered by machine. I'm Mike Evans from the Australian Security Academy. A check of the VWA gift register showing who was there, what time it was, where it happened and when, in association with the receipts from the credit cards, will see who paid for the breakfast or lunch or for the beer or for whatever the occasion was. G'day investigators, Mike Evans with episode 269 of Spy Curious, your Friday weekly private investigator, government investigator and corporate investigator news. This week, we've got some really great questions. First, about retrieving children that have gone to other countries. Secondly, about will an employer pay for my Certificate 3 in Investigative Services? So we answer that at the end of the program today. We've got job vacancies and a whole lot of other stuff in relation to investigation news of what's been happening this week. Now, the big news this week has been continuing on from last time when we told you that WorkSafe in Victoria were seeking an investigations manager, and they had to have a Certificate 4 in government or a diploma and a Certificate 3 in investigative services and be a licensed investigator, and all that was fine. That was okay. No problem with any of that. That's what they have to have that kind of experience. G'day, Jamie. Good to see you, mate. Great to see you. Thanks for checking in. So, but the issue came when they said that they have to have a membership of a professional development and governance body, including either the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners, which is absolutely fine, nothing wrong with that at all, and or the Australian Institute of Professional Investigators. So what that means is someone at WorkSafe, a public servant who's paid by you and I, the taxpayer, and our tax pays for that person's job and their income and their living, right? That person has chosen to, by themselves, funnel investigators into the AIPI. Now, this is the tip of the iceberg. If he gets away with it, nothing happens and the minister isn't made aware of it and the person in charge at WorkSafe isn't aware that it's happening, then it'll become the norm that the licensed private investigators in Victoria have to join the AIPI and pay $250 a year membership fee when they can be a member of any other industry association of their choice for less than $100 or free. But the VWA has chosen to funnel the first lot through into the AIPI. They can't do it. They're public servants. They don't have the right to do that. They don't tell you what food to eat, what colour tie to wear, or what kind of model of vehicle to buy. That's not their job. The VWA's job in Victoria is to look after the interests of injured workers. So that's what we're going to be looking at today. Now, this week, the VWA advertised another investigation position. Now, this one is not a manager's role, but this position, they don't have to be a member of the AIPI or any other fraud control place. It's dropped. It was their last job, but it's gone now. We've got the attention of people in VWA in Victoria. G'day, Amber, how are you going? Great to see you. Hope it's nice and warm in beautiful Canberra. Okay, so we're going to focus on that. So this week, there's no requirement to be a member of an industry association, in particular the AIPI only, and no other investigation agency at all like there was last week. That's gone. Makes you wonder why, doesn't it? What happened? What conversations happened? Because the conversations that would have happened when this was decided would have happened over a few beers, a couple of bottles of wine at a lunch where a couple of mates got together and decided that it was okay to be funneled into the AIPI, and that's it. So this is really interesting corruption and fraud control stuff in government, and we're going to explore, okay, what the confidence barriers are at the VWA into stopping this and making sure it doesn't happen again. So a lot of fun today. Issue I got this week, which is really important. Are there any companies out there that would be happy to organise and pay for training to a person to complete the Certificate 3 in Investigative Services? If so, I'd be happy to complete the Certificate 3 in Investigative Services with the Australian Security Academy at my earliest convenience. Now, prefacing that was, dear Mike, I watch by Curious every week, really enjoy the program. Thanks for informative, blah, 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 blah. Thanks very much for that query. Are there companies that pay for the training for licensed private investigators? Yeah, there are. Lots of them. Now, what they do is they don't randomly pick someone off on a dartboard and go, oh, right, we'll just hit that person's name, we'll put them through a course and they can come and work for us. No, they have an onboarding process and an acquisition process and a talent acquisition process where they identify people who they can work with, who have qualifications or experience that they can work with, and they will pay for and put them through the Certificate 3 in Investigative Services course. It's perfectly natural. Why wouldn't they? They've got a business that's in a thriving, absolutely thriving industry in Australia. They're going to take up options to develop talent as well. And they want to choose who they do it for. So this isn't a government-funded program, or they get no kickback. They get no support for it. They pay for it out of their own pockets. So in answer to that question, yeah, yes, they do. Now, are they all the big companies? No, not necessarily. The boutique investigation firms in Australia who exist for specific clientele are very successful. Now, no one's going to tell you this because they want to keep it a secret, right? They have a competitive edge in what they deliver in professional support services. They have a vested interest in developing new talent. And it's been one of the big failures over the last 5 years as an industry that's not very good at promoting itself for all sorts of reasons that are going to become obvious in a minute here, okay? That's what they do to swing it back in their favour. So they put the person through the course, they monitor their progress through the course, they assist the person during that program, they show them their systems and that sort of thing. They don't get any favours, they don't get an any easier run. The student still has to do it because the employer's so busy. They haven't got time to do the course with them or for them. All they do is enrol them in it, pay for it, and encourage them through it. At the end of that, the person can get their licence, become a licensed investigator, and work for that firm exclusively. You will not ever be working for any other firm. So they paid for it. You'll be signing an agreement that you'll only work for them for the next 5 years or whatever, because they've invested it. If you leave before that time, you pay the course back. That's what they do. It's not all one way. It's not all easy for me and hard for them. They've been doing it for 24 years that I'm aware of, doing training and assessment in that qualification here. So keep it in mind, they do. You can apply to places. You can ask them if they do that. That's up to you, right? But if you really want to get ahead, get your foot in the door, get moving, get on this Facebook page, see where the vacancies are, start applying and put yourself forward constantly. It's Friday afternoon, people. All those investigation agencies are looking for the investigators for next week to allocate the work in Mildura, in Swan Hill, in Geelong, in Corio, wherever. That's what they're looking for, and they want an investigator to do that locally. They don't want just any investigator. They want an investigator that's a member of an industry association that's genuine, that isn't dodgy and isn't funneled through the VWA. They want investigators that do continuous professional development. Why is continuous professional development so important? And do other state workers' compensation authorities funnel their staff through the AIPI or any other industry association? Do other state WorkSafe authorities like the VWA in Victoria encourage bribery and corruption through $145 payments to training organisations between each other, where 120 of them had their licences cancelled in Victoria before they could even get a start or become a member of the AIPI? Let's find out. And let's have a look and see if the other jobs that have been advertised recently requested membership of the AIPI as a funneling technique through them, or is it just WorkSafe Victoria doing it? But first, what's the important thing about CPD? development so important in your career as an investigator?
This is a demonstration of what continuous professional development is all about. This glass of water represents where you are at in your career. Now, we all have careers and we all have an occupation, and what happens is we start off and we develop it, and as it grows and as we grow, things start to happen to our business, such as this dirt. And it comes into our business that this glass of water represents in our career, and it messes everything up. And what we try and do is we then spend our careers getting rid of all that crap. It's tax, it's staff that don't turn up, it's clients that don't pay, it's marketing that we never get finished. And we're constantly looking at our glass and taking out the bad reviews from clients, the disastrous being late for appointment because of the traffic, the kids' dental bills. The marketing people just don't get what I sent them in the brief, and we're taking that crap out of our beautiful career all the time, aren't we? But here's how professional development and continuous professional development work. Our glass of water with all that crap in it, when we top it up with continuous professional development, such as like this, suddenly we get clarity and we start to see our career. We have options and solutions because of that continuous professional development that we keep topping our glass up with to maintain competitive, to build our future, to stay in business, to handle those issues, and it works. Through AirLap, Investigations Uni and the Australian Security Academy, you are constantly fixing your career with continuous professional development, learning from the people who you would like to emulate in your career because they've been successful at it. Cheers.
The Industry Association AirLap is not endorsed by any corrupt official at the VWA in Victoria. So recently, the VWA advertised a position vacant where the successful applicant must be a member of the AIPI. This is unprecedented.
No, we don't do that in New South Wales at Safe Work. Injured New South Wales workers are our priority here.
WorkSafe Tasmania's focus is on injured Tasmanian workers. Our processes are transparent and for the benefit of injured workers. We use tender processes to identify and appoint professional support services awards.
There are no secret deals at WorkSafe Western Australia. The welfare of injured workers and integrity of the scheme is paramount here.
Injured Queensland workers are our concern at WorkSafe Queensland. Transparency is paramount in the investigation process here. No, we don't do favours or deals.
Only the VWA in Victoria accepts bribes instead of looks after injured workers in their state.
That is a no from me. It does not fit with our process, policy or procedure.
Corruption in government.
No, not in our agency. We don't do that. The policy, process and procedure details what we can and cannot do.
WorkSafe Victoria condones bribery and corruption while Retail workers are psychologically
The Department of
injured.
Education, leads the delivery of education and development services to children and students both directly through government schools and indirectly through the regulation and funding of early childhood services and non-government schools. As a senior investigations officer, you will understand and interpret a variety of legislation including the Planning and Environment Act 1987, Local Government Act 1989, Bayside Planning Scheme and Council's local law. You will deliver a high standard of service to our community and other stakeholders and will demonstrate the ability to use the relevant software platforms to support the service.
We have opportunities for 3 individuals to join our external oversight team as compliance officers on a full-time ongoing basis, reporting to the managing principal lawyer. These roles will assist to ensure that IBAC meets each of its compliance obligations in accordance with its legislative requirements, including the timely, efficient and effective conduct of reviews and inspections, analysis of data and other information, and production of compliance reports. The Australian Health Practitioner Regulation Agency, AHPRA, works in partnership with 15 national boards to implement the National Regulatory Scheme for Health Professionals. The purpose of health practitioner regulation is to protect the public by ensuring that only health practitioners who have the skills, qualifications and knowledge to provide safe care are registered.
As a senior investigations officer, you will understand and interpret a variety of legislation, including the Planning and Environment Act 1987, Local Government Act 1989, Bayside Planning Scheme, and Council's local law. You will deliver a high standard of service to our community and other stakeholders and will demonstrate the ability to use the relevant software platforms to support the service. This role sits within WorkSafe's Dispute Management Division, which has the primary responsibility for the management of common law claims and related litigation, recovery of paid compensation from liable third parties, oversight of claim-related litigation generally, and contract management of WorkSafe's legal panel firms and cost consultants. The purpose of this role is to identify, allocate, instruct, and effectively manage WorkSafe's recovery of paid compensation under Section 369 of the Workplace Injury Rehabilitation and Compensation Act 2013 for a portfolio of matters from negligent third parties. Specifically, the Technical Recoveries Advisor will be responsible for the assessment. Manningham Council proudly delivers over 100 different services to our vibrant and diverse community. From parks and galleries to shopping hubs and leisure centres, it is our focus to ensure that Manningham remains a livable and harmonious place to reside, work and visit. We provide challenging and rewarding employment opportunities to innovative, passionate and driven people. We have a positive and friendly working environment, and we offer our employees a range of benefits, including flexible work options, opportunities for career development, and health and well-being initiatives.
Contribute to the operations team's implementation of best practice regulation. Assess less complex applications and statutory notifications made under the Payment Times Reporting Act and make appropriate and defensible recommendations to relevant decision makers. With limited guidance, action stakeholder correspondence and inquiries by undertaking timely assessments, making appropriate recommendations, and drafting appropriate responses.
Basically, the whole process boiled down to simple failure to enforce boundaries.
The gaps were in the areas of knowledge, skill, information, training, and attitude.
A lone person at the VWA has given their ear to someone at the AIPI and has agreed to funnel future staff into that organisation against process, policy and procedure at the VWA in Victoria. The AIPI is associated with a registered training organisation that's had over 120 issued private investigation qualifications in Victoria cancelled by the regulator, the Victorian Police Licensing Regulation Division, who did a very good job in cancelling those qualifications because they were not done in accordance with the LRD's conditions of approval for registered training organisations in Victoria. The regulator, the VWA, is out of touch with the reality of what's happening in Victoria in relation to those responsible for looking after the investigations involving the injured workers of Victoria in an ethical manner where no money, such as a $145 bribe to grease the wheel, has to change hands. This is unprecedented in the history of the VWA in Victoria and very disappointing to see in 2024.
Never thought I'd see it in my lifetime. If you're upset about anything you just heard or saw, contact the Minister for WorkSafe in Victoria and explain to him what you're upset about. Okay? I'm sure once he's cleared up the issues with the unions in Victoria in the building industry, he'll have a very good response to your concerns about this and the effect on injured workers in the VWA scheme in Victoria. More to come on it in a minute. Regardless of what happens, if you're a Victorian licensed private investigator and you feel that you have to join an industry association to remain in business as funneled by the VWA in that ad 2 weeks ago, wrong is wrong, even if everyone is doing it, people. Right is right, even if no one is doing it. So stay right, don't go with the crowd. And the really good thing about all this got nothing to do with surveillance. That's amazing. Surveillance has come out of this squeaky clean. Well done, surveillance investigators. Down in Tasmania, where the WorkSafe Authority down there are uncorrupt, do not accept bribes. They've had a success this week with finding a firm down there where a worker was injured after injuring themselves with a fractured skull after falling from some pallets. So that happened this week down in Victoria. Other things that happened in the news this week, I'll just switch again. Go up a little bit. Looks like I didn't put it in. But look, the issue with the RTOs and the bribery between International Security Training Academy and Private Investigators College of Australia is that they partnership agreement between themselves for $145 paid, right, in bribes to issue qualifications that would be endorsed by the Victorian Police Licensing Regulation Division, given that Private Investigators College of Australia had no approved trainers, no approved course, no assessors registered and qualified with the VWA as required. And through that partnership, they said they were. Now, to get rid of any question in relation to this, absolutely any question, and to have the VWA coming out smelling like roses because of the AIPI's poor decision, all we have to do is find the agreement between Private Investigators College of Australia and International Security Training Academy. It's a partnership agreement registered within 30 days with the regulator of training organisations, ASQA. So if you can find that, everything's going to be fine. Give a copy to the Minister as well.
No, you can't see this agreement because it isn't worth the paper it isn't written on. It doesn't say who it's between, what date it's for, and what's going to be taught and assessed, and who designed it, and who is going to issue the qualification, and what it's going to say on the statement of results. This is no agreement. Keep searching, investigators. We have to find that agreement. We can't use this invisible one.
Let me be very clear. The VWA in Victoria has tried to funnel the person in charge of their investigations into an industry association that's got an association with an RTO that's had 120 Victorian licensed private investigator qualifications and licenses taken off them and cancelled. The VWA has made a very big mistake. There was no written agreement.
There is no written agreement.
There was no contract.
What contract?
They should have had a written
We'll call it a written agreement.
and that should have been registered with ASCA. But now
This partnership is over.
it's over. And the VWA and the AIPI haven't got a partnership either. They should have checked it out before they started funneling. It gets worse. It gets a lot worse. One of the teachers involved in one of those organisations was teaching in Queensland in a Certificate 4 in Government Investigation course. That teacher, for 3 separate councils when he was teaching that course in, the Certificate 4 in Government Investigation for council inspectors, he gave the people in the class an exercise to do on the floor. Then without their knowledge and consent, he went round behind them, took photographs of them and posted their images on social media. This is a debacle.
Wrong is wrong even if everyone is doing it. Right is right even if no one is doing it. At WorkSafe in Victoria, someone took it upon themselves to authorise the funnelled membership of WorkSafe public servant staff into an industry association charging $280 a year, and with dubious association with an RTO that had 120 of its graduate students' private investigator licence qualifications cancelled in Victoria. This level of corruption is unprecedented in Victorian State Government in the workers' compensation scheme, where all of a sudden injured workers have become secondary to the acceptance of bribery and corruption in that state. You cannot, as a public servant, funnel anyone into a corporation or industry association. This was done over a few beers at the pub. Adding to the mix was the problem they've got at Victorian WorkSafe now with the councils in Queensland and the teacher involved and his posting of images on the internet.
So, something to think about this week. We'll be back next week with some more news on what's happening in the investigations industry around Australia. I'm Mike Evans from the Australian Security Academy. I'm going out in my usual way with our Koreans. Here we go.
작전 종료. 전원 복귀할 것.
That's our mission complete this week. As a government investigator, one of the most tragic things you experience is fraud and corruption within the state or federal government department or a local government department. It leaves that department devastated. They're absolutely flattened. Internally, someone has done the wrong thing and it stains the whole department. One of the roles you have in Certificate for and Government Investigation is not just laying waste to that agency or that department where there's 400 employees but only one was corrupt. You're not doing that, right? You are going to be part of, these were the gaps: knowledge, skill, information, training, or attitude that failed. Now we're going to address those with process, policy and procedure adherence, with confidence safeguards, and we're going to rebuild our organisation back to what it should be. And in this case, in Victoria, get on with looking after the injured workers of Victoria. And it can be done, and it is done. Think about that. If you want a Certificate for and Government Investigation, that's part of your role too. See you next week, people.